Welcome, everyone, to the Fort Detrick Business Development Office webinar series. Today's webinar is Grants 101, Part 1, Understanding the Process and Finding Resources. I am Gloria Larkin, President of TargetGov. We are happy to be presenting this webinar in conjunction with the Fort Detrick Business Development Office. Before we get started, I have a few webinar notes to share with you so that today's session runs smoothly. This is a live webinar. For those attending live today, you are online for the visual and dialed-in portion of the webinar. If you're viewing this as a recording, you're seeing and hearing it via the Internet. Because this is live, we will mute the attendees so that background noises will be kept to a minimum. However, if you need to take another call, please hang up on this line and call back when you want to return. You will be allowed in. Due to the number of attendees today, we are going to ask you to send your questions in by email. This is an interactive webinar, and we want to be able to answer all of your questions relating to today's topic because we have a fabulous subject matter expert on today. And if you send your questions in to us at questions at the email is ask at fdbdo.com. We will answer your questions during the webinar or email you an answer. And if you're listening to this as a recording after the webinar is live, you will have all of your questions answered 24/7. We promise to answer absolutely every question that comes in. If you have any problems at all while you're listening to the webinar, please call our office number at 301-620-7071. Well, the next hour is going to be full of great information. Let me introduce our subject matter expert, Colette Relaford, President of Strive Business Solutions. Colette is the founder and president of Strive Business Solutions, and her career spans more than 20 years in training, management consulting, professional services, and writing. Her experience involves working in a variety of industries, including industrial, hardware, software, professional services, real estate, and construction. Her strengths include a detailed understanding of processes, strategy, and business, and how each can impact growth, people, and communication in organizations regardless of size. She works with clients in the commercial and nonprofit and government sectors. In starting Strive Business Solutions, Colette has developed a company that is designed to help organizations use sound business practices and creativity in order to be effective and efficient. This then enables organizations to be able to compete at a higher level. Strive does this by offering a suite of services that includes management consulting, training, and professional services. Colette, it is a real pleasure to have you as our subject matter expert today. Tell us about the grant world.
Well, thank you very much. The grant world is a little interesting right now. I think funds are starting to increase again and coming back, so I think this is a great topic. People are going to get a lot out of it. It's going to be high energy. We're going to answer some questions and give some practical tools, things that I think will really help people as they look to pursue grants, research grants, and eventually decide whether they are ready to write a grant. So let's jump right in. I always like to say people have some misconceptions about grants, and so I like to first off start with the reality. And probably the one that throws people the most is I say a grant is not free money. Getting a grant is hard work. There's a lot of competition for funds, though there aren't a lot of funds out there. And if you think you qualify for a grant, you're going to need to use some of your organizational resources throughout the effort. So don't think that it's easy to get just because it seems there's a lot of funds out there. So as I said, what seems to surprise people the most is I point out that there is no such thing as free money. There's money, but it's not free. Think of it. If the U.S. or any organization was just constantly giving away free money, they'd pretty much be out of business, especially at the federal level. I think that would not be something that people would like our funds to be used for, is just to be giving out free money, or we'd run out of money very quickly. It wouldn't last long, in other words. And I don't think we want to take that type of risk. So there is money out there, as I mentioned, and it is available, but I also like to point out it's not easy to get. There is a lot of work in getting a grant. To me, in my mind, grants are simply a form of a business proposal. You just have a different type of bottom line. Instead of maybe a tangible, say you're building a box if you're a hardware company, or a tangible professional service if you're a consulting firm, what your tangible bottom line or what you're offering back are your obligations. So that's what a grant is. A grant is an opportunity to get money that is not free, that entails, one, a commitment to do what you say you're going to do, a commitment that your organization will meet the obligations of the grant. So a grant is money, but it involves a high level of obligations and commitments on the part of the grantee from the grantor. There's expectations. Remember, if you receive this money and you don't fulfill or comply with those regulations, you could be responsible to legally return the money. There could be further legal actions taken. So it is a hard level obligation. It's not just something, oh, here's a check and you can go away. So it's essential that when you look at grants, you understand that they are a form of a contract. You are bound to fulfill your part of the obligation. You've made a commitment. You've been given an opportunity. Now you must come through. If you don't, penalties, plain and simple, can be imposed, and that's what you want to avoid. So now that we have, I would say, a good understanding of what a grant is and what a grant isn't, I'd like to kind of go through some reasons to apply for a grant. There's a lot of different reasons that organizations might be interested in grants, and there are also some different types of grants. So I wanted to go through and give you a better understanding of both of those. Some reasons that you might be interested in applying for a grant: making a difference. A lot of times grants are pursued by nonprofits, not always, but often they are. So writing a successful grant proposal can often bring a high level of much-needed attention to your cause. It's something you care about. It's something you're interested in. You're trying to affect change in your community or in your world or in a particular sector, and this is a great way to do that. But as you think about it, remember, it's your dream, and the reality is not everybody may care about your dream as much as you do. So though you're making a difference, you have to understand and keep in the back of your mind that obligation and commitment. Another way is, well, essentially you need funding. It's great to have an organization or a goal, but if you don't have the funds and the resources to support it, it's not going to happen. So another reason, besides making a difference, is people need funding. But remember, it's not free funding. Another reason to apply for a grant might be to diversify. You've become too dependent on one source. No organization should look to one source for all its resources. That overall is a recipe for disaster. Everybody's heard about some small business or organization or nonprofit that failed because they only had one client or one source of funding. You don't want to be one of those people. So using a grant is a way to supplement funds. You might also look for pledge drives or dinners or other funding sources, but this is a way to provide more financial stability over time to your organization. So think of it as part of your funding, but don't think of one grant as your sole source of funding. It's also a way to increase your credibility. Winning a grant money will usually get you some type of notoriety. It'll affect your brand. People will hear about it. Often your organization or the organization that funds it will do a press release. So this can be a great way to get credibility. If you're a newer organization, a lot of times people are concerned about where the money is going, or are you going to be here long term? Will they actually get to see the results of this investment? So those types of things can be helped by getting initial some type of funding. People like to give to organizations and causes that show they are worthy of support, that they've got stability, that they're going to be around, that they're truly making a difference. So every grant you get is another way to show that and boost your credibility. The other reason people apply for grants is to encourage self-discovery. The grant process is kind of involved and labor-intensive. As we go through, you'll see that we're going to ask a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of steps before you actually even get to the writing portion. And that is great self-discovery. The more you know about your organization or your business, the more chance of succeeding and growing that you will have. You'll be surprised as you go through a lot of the things that I'm going to show you. You'll see your organization in a new light. You'll find areas that you probably didn't know were possible ways to grow, or areas where you maybe need to scale back that it's not your strongest point. It also promotes accountability if you get a grant. Remember, there's that obligation, there's that commitment. You've signed a contract. You are responsible. This isn't a chance to just give up because now you've got some money and you can just kind of float on that. You said you're going to do this in your proposal. Now you're accountable for doing that. You have to follow through and meet those goals. So it's a way to hold yourself, your organization, and your people accountable. It's also a way to expand your network. As you start to get grants or start pursuing or even looking at grants, you're going to come across other people who are going after those same grants or pursued it in the past or interested in grants as well. You might become a resource for others because you become such an expert. And a lot of times people that are involved with one grant or one organization are involved in others. So it could be a way to expand your network. You never know where somebody might be serving on one grant board and also serving on another, or pursuing a grant in one area, but they're on the board for a different grant organization. So it's another way to expand your network and possibly find more resources that help you, and as I believe, help others because you're sharing your knowledge. There's a lot of types of grants. I think a lot of times people only think of levels of grants or resources of grants, so they only think and lump all the grants together under federal grants or foundation grants. But I think it's important to understand that grants come in different types and that there are different levels of resource. So I want to go through and give you an understanding of some of the types of grants. First up, a challenge grant. This is a grant that in a sense goes with something that you're already done. A grant is awarded only if you received a designated amount of resources at other places. In other words, if you raise $1,000 for this cause through fundraisers or private donations, we will then provide this grant for an additional $5,000. So that ties into that way that you diversify, that you're not tied to one source, that it helps you gain more funding because of the funding you've already done. There's also consortium grants. So those are grants awarded for a particular project governed by a document. It might be something that it's a specific project. Maybe it's build a specific playground in a certain area. So it's a particular project that you've received a grant for, or maybe it's a particular area of research. Maybe it's a particular bioscience project you're working on. So you receive a particular grant for that. Another one is a demonstration grant, and this ties into that credibility and that accountability I pointed out. This gives grant money for a limited amount of time. It's, in a sense, a way to test what you're doing. If it's a new project, maybe they'll say, let's test and provide you $5,000 to work on this project for 90 days, see where it's at, what kind of results you get, how it's helping people, are you meeting your goals, and then there might be an opportunity to go back, and that grant then continues at another level. There's also institutional grants. So those are a volume of grants that could be awarded over time, say to a university or a program or a group of programs, but they're done in a sense as a volume but released at different levels as you go through the program or through the project. And there's also a step fund grant. That grant looks at a project for the first year or maybe the first quarter, and then as you go through the project, the funds decrease. So maybe you get $100,000 the first year, assuming that you've met all your goals. Essentially, that first year, the next year it would go to 75, the next year to 50,000. But it's done in levels, and as long as you're meeting your goals, you then, for the next few years, also know you have some funding. So those give you a sense of some of the types of grants, which are good to know. So you know maybe what you're looking for, what's going to work best for your organization. Once you understand some of that, I think it's very important to do some discovery. This is kind of research or looking at your own business that I mentioned earlier. It's a discovery session, so you have an idea of what to do when you apply. I think it's key that you know the reason you're applying for the grants, more than just, well, we need money or we need a check. People apply for grants for a lot of reasons, and I think just like how you've designed your organization, you need to understand why you're pursuing this money. What's your clear reason or goal for the funding? Is it a key that if your business wants to pursue a goal, is it because you want to work with other nonprofits? You need to understand your business. In other words, what you're going to do is a type of strategic planning. You're going to actually look at your overall business plan, know your real reasons, understand your business, know your strategy. The best way to do this is, I think, in steps. As you evaluate and look at your business, a proper business evaluation needs to be more than just the basic steps. Again, more than just, I want a check or we're new and that's why we want the funding. Think of it as you're interviewing yourself. Understand your reasons. You want to make sure you really know your business and where it's heading, as much as if you were choosing a new person for your business or even choosing to start the business. There are key things that you should look at to understand where you've come from, where you are now, and where you plan to go. Finding the answers to these questions is not always easy. I like to point that out. It's not going to be an overnight process. It's not going to be a 5-minute process. But what it will do is give you a real clear view of some of the strengths and weaknesses of your business, and it'll give you some great ways to look at your business. As I said, I think you'll get a lot more out of this than just something that'll help you apply for grants. I think you'll get information that'll help you be a better organization. So as I mentioned, look at it from 3 different ways: the past, the present, and the future. When you're looking at the past, a lot of these answers you probably know, but you're also recording this information for your people because they're going to help in the grant process. The grant process is usually not just one person in an organization. So this is information that can help new people to your team, consultants you're bringing in, outside resources, people you may team with to really understand what's going on. So think of things like, when were you founded? Who are the key founders? What were the primary needs or vision you were founded to address? Think of some of your past successes. Where have you been successful? Where have you not been successful? These are all things that will help you understand your reason going forward for needing to apply for a grant. You also need to look at where your business is right now, the present. What is your current mission? Has your mission and vision changed from where you originally were, and why? Who are your competitors? Even if you're a nonprofit, and a lot of people don't like to think this way, but nonprofits as well have competitors, just as for-profits do. Everybody is competing for those funds. So whether you have a similar mission or not, you have to essentially think of them as competitors. And you need to know who's out there. Are they stronger? Why are they stronger? Maybe that'll give you a sense of, they're stronger in that area, but we're stronger in this area, so we need to go for a different type of grant than they would. Or, thinking ahead, it could be further down the road somebody you need to team with because you complement each other. You also want to look at, what are your current priorities? What are the missions or the projects or the goals that are most important? You might have several priorities, but depending on the season, the time of year, current economic conditions, what you've achieved, your priorities tend to change. So you need to know what your current priorities are. You also need to understand who is the demographic or your clients that you're trying to reach. You need to have a clear understanding of where you're trying to make an impact. If you're doing some type of science, what will the results of that research ultimately lead to? Who will be changed by it? If you're doing some type of community outreach, who are you reaching? Where is that community? Think of it also as how will your services overall or your research benefit other people? What are you doing now that's going to affect and implement change in the future? As I mentioned, think of your priorities. And along with those priorities, think of major programs. What are your objectives for each of your programs? What are your key needs? And I don't just mean external needs. What are your key internal needs? There are grants for various things, staffing, training, actual programs. So think of those things. What are your key needs for the staff? Do you have a need for better facilities? Do you have a need for expanded facilities? Is there equipment you need? Knowing all these things will help you determine what your goal is going to be when you look for a grant. It'll help you determine who you're going to pursue and what type of grant you're going to be looking for. And then there's the future. You know, the world is constantly changing, and so is your environment. I guarantee it. Think of trends you're seeing. You know, things are changing. What trends have you seen since you started? Trends you're dealing with now? And then think ahead to the future. What trends, based on your knowledge, do you see coming up that could affect or influence what you're doing? You never know how this will help you determine what your real goals are. And if nothing else, you'll get a very good sense of your organization. As I said, this is a tool that will help you in a lot of ways, not just in looking for grants, but it'll help you to be an overall stronger organization. It's a form of strategic planning. I know it seems like a lot already, but think how much value you're going to add to your business. Also, think that this is going to make it so much easier for you when it actually comes time to write that grant proposal, because you'll have, in a sense already, a lot of the answers you'll need for several different grants. You'll have a good understanding of your organization, and it'll make the overall process smoother. This is the way that you can start putting in place even a grant writing process or a grant writing decision-making process. Much like for a proposal for business or a government RFP, this can be part of your bid, no bid decision process because you'll know what your strengths are in advance. So now that you've got some basic understanding of where you are, who your business is, and your reasons, I think it's important, still not ready to go research yet, to have a wish list. That way you understand what you're really wanting even more so than you do about what your business is. You've got a clear, documented understanding of your business now, so now is a good time to think about how you're going to fund the company with your wish list. Think back for all those reasons that you started the company, all the answers with material you gathered during that discovery process on your organization. Utilize this to create a wish or needs list, as I like to call it. It'll be centered on some of your goals, and these will be the goals past, present, and future. You'll be surprised how maybe some of the things from the past could actually, again, be part of your future goals. You know, things often come back, so something that you maybe looked at in the past might come back on your wish list because now you're strong enough to look at that again. This is why knowing your business is key. You don't want to waste time pursuing grants or funding that's not going to truly benefit your business. Brainstorming a wish list is a great activity, and as you do that, I think you should brainstorm not just with maybe your immediate board or your upper-level management. Include some of the people that are, in a sense, going to be in the trenches all across your organization. This is a great communication tool because you might not know some of the ideas that other people in your organization are thinking about. So this can even help you determine action or changes you may need to make in the future to achieve some of these goals. Include a cross-section of your company. Involve as many people as you can without making it overwhelming. The way to do this, I say, is I call it a simple wish list exercise, and think of it as the magic check exercise. If tomorrow someone granted your organization a check for, say, $25,000, $50,000, $100,000. Come up with 3 or 4 different levels. What would you use that money for? How many ways would you spend this newfound windfall that you've just received? Think of it at different levels, because that'll help you decide different types of grants as well to pursue based on their amounts. Develop a wish list or a needs list for each level. You can even break it up into categories at each level. Maybe it's internal funding at $25,000, external funding at $25,000, staffing at $25,000, programs at $25,000. Think of different categories and then do it at the different levels. So $25,000, $50,000, $100,000. Remember, it's brainstorming. So the fact that you might have a lot of ideas is okay, because we're going to actually prioritize that, and I'll show you how to do that. But right now you're just getting as many ideas as possible to have a list to be able to prioritize from. You might even remove stuff from the list when we prioritize, and that's okay as well. Or you at least probably want to maybe save that wish list for later, because once again, as you grow and you go back and do that self-discovery, some of those items might come off your wish list again and move to your new wish list as you come up with a new way to look at your organization. As I mentioned, we're also going to need to prioritize that list, because the list you have is probably pretty large. So think of different ways that you can prioritize it. Look at it in terms of dollars, how much the program is going to cost, the impact of the program, the types of programs. Ask yourself, is this ranking in line with our mission? Do our resources support the mission? Put it in degrees. In other words, rate them from 1 to 5. Take some off if you have to. That's okay. It might not be on there now, but it could be on there later. Think of things, are they critical? Is it a potential for something larger? There are a lot of different ways that you could prioritize, so think of what works best for you. Could you pursue something on the list if you had other resources? That might be another way to prioritize them. But now you're kind of working to shorten your list, make it really detailed, and have a list to go forward. The important reason is because now that you have that list, now you're really ready to look for and start funding or looking for funding for your organization. But this is an important step. It's as important as the business evaluation, the wish list. This list is also important to prioritize. So don't run through any of these early steps. I know the tendency is to want to, because you just want to research, write it, and get some money. But you don't want to go in there without being prepared, because you're going to waste a lot of time. It might seem like a lot of prep work, but overall this type of prep work will save you a lot of time further down the road. You'll have some resources in place. You'll have some set processes in place. You'll have some knowledge that won't just help you with one grant, but will help you with multiple grants. You'll be more effective as you go into research if you know what you're researching for, why you're researching, and why it matters. So take time with all those steps. And